Hello, class. Welcome to Module 7. I just want to kick this week off with a video to help you with the assignment. If you saw my video from last week, this is basically a refactor and also, well, actually, it's more of just an addition of some of a new, using a new property that we actually added last week to the course class. That was the is registered property. So we're actually going to use that this week. And also your GUI, graphical user interface, has a few more elements on it. And so we're going to take advantage of that and do things a little differently. If you saw my video last week, you know that we had some message boxes pop up to tell you if you registered successfully or if you weren't allowed to register because you were about to exceed the maximum number of hours or had already registered for the course. This time we're going to be giving you the same information, but it's just going to be on some labels on the window. So let's get started now. I've downloaded the solution code that was provided to you for the assignment, and let's run it and see what it does. I already ran it. I observed that there are no syntax errors in it. There's just a lot of stuff left incomplete to do. So I suppose you could say those are logic errors. But there are no syntax errors. In other words, the program, as provided, will compile and run. And where is it? Okay, here we go. We've got, we have some items in our drop down. That's all populated, but your register button doesn't do anything. So you don't see anything appearing down here. Also, there's a place where we're going to display total credit hours that you've registered for. Obviously, that's not wired up yet either. So you just got some wiring up of things to do here. So let's stop that for now. And now also there is a video provided for this week's assignment that shows you what the output should look like. And that's going to be the same. You know, as I said, I'm going to show you some additional features, some things you can do that go beyond what you're expected to do in this assignment. And as always, you're welcome to do these things and learn these lessons, or you're welcome to do the assignment as is. No judgment, no penalty. You know, I understand that people are in different places coming into this course, and so if you feel like you're ready to learn about, for example, JSON notation, that sort of thing that I'm going to show you, and in fact showed you last week as well, then by all means take advantage. If not, you know, you're more than welcome. I'm not going to give anybody a better grade or a worse grade depending on whether you do it the way I'm showing you or do it the way that you're required to do it for the regular assignment. Either way is fine, as long as you come up with the output that we're about to see. So here's the video that shows you what the program should do.
Hello there again. The school has hired a number of very talented C# programmers that took the console register student application and produced a Windows Presentation Foundation counterpart. And we were asked to use this WPF application to register for classes. So I bring up this WPF form and I click on this drop-down menu and I see a list of all of the courses for which I would like to register. I selected IT 145 and I click on this button to register for this course. I get a confirmation message that the registration is confirmed, and I get a list of the currently registered courses, including 145, and I get also a total credit hours for which I have registered so far. I would like to register for 2 more courses, so I select IT 200 and I click on that. I get the same confirmation for IT 200, and I can see the IT 200 has been added to the currently registered for classes, and the total number of credit hours has been updated to 6. I want to register for my 3rd class. I heard that the 315 is really a good class, and I would like to register for it because it teaches about object-oriented analysis and design. So I select this class and I register for. Oh, wait a minute, I think I made a mistake. I clicked on 200 instead of 315. Luckily, that GUI interface also picked that up, and it says I have already registered for IT 200. So I do not want to register for the same course twice. So I select IT 315, and I click on that, and it shows that the 3 classes that I'm registered for are 145, 200, and 315. And just to check to see if I can register for one more class, 330, IT 330, and I click on that, and it says you cannot register for more than 9 credit hours, and that is correct. So this WPF seems to be working pretty well.
Okay, so that's what it's expected to do. Now, if you noticed, the text in the label that says, well, here it says you cannot register for more than 9 credit hours, and it's red. That's good, because that's kind of in a warning state, an error state. But it was also red, I noticed, when you were able to successfully register. Let's go back and verify that I'm not thinking. Yes, here you see. Oh no, that's an error state too. Okay, registration confirmed. You see here. Normally you wouldn't make that red too. You would have that. Red is kind of an alert color, like, okay, something's not right. So I'm going to show you how to make that red only when it's one of the error conditions. So that's the video. So let's get right to work changing this up. Now let's go to the course first. Now, if you remember from last week, the way that your textbook tells you to write accessors and mutators, and the way that the best practice way in C# are not one and the same. As you can see here in the code provided, they're using the textbook, your textbook method, excuse me, and they're making a separate method for get name and set name. Now, the way I want to show you how to do it, let's just go ahead, since we're into courses, we'll go ahead and add everything we need to here. So we have private string name, that's good. We also need an ID. And also, I'm going to change this. You see here, they're just using empty quotes. A best practice way to do this is to use string.empty. It's going to give you the same thing, but it's that's letting the language set that to an empty string for you. So that's just a better approach, and it looks cleaner to me. It doesn't look hard-coded like the open and close parentheses, quotations. Is registered already. This is just my preference, but I'm gonna just say is registered. And also we have number of credits. And then if you recall, last week we created a parameterized constructor, and then because of that, as I explained, we also need a default constructor that takes no arguments, has no parameters. You honestly wouldn't need that if you always intend for the person to use the parameterized constructor. But if you want someone for any reason to be able to create an instance of your class without having to pass in any arguments first and then setting the properties later, then you're going to need that default constructor that takes no parameters. So let's do that. And as you may recall, a constructor has no return type. It actually does return an instance, an object of your class. And as always, the name of the constructor is the same as the name of your class. So here, even though we aren't taking in any constructors, we're going to make sure that we set the private properties to their intended default values. So that's our default constructor. And now they've provided a parameterized constructor, but we actually need some more arguments here to take advantage of the JSON objects we're going to use to set up this course, a set of courses. And as you see, we didn't pass in an is registered because you would, we don't have a use case right now, I should say, for uh, instantiating a course object and registering for it all at the same time. Because remember, we're creating the objects and using them to populate a drop-down list. And then after we select one in the click event of the button, of the register button, then we're going to set the is registered property. So we don't want to go ahead and set it as we're creating the objects. Otherwise, if you set it to true as you're creating the objects, nobody would ever be able to register for a course the way we're going to do this. Okay, so we're going to make our accessors and mutators now the best practice C# way. So this get name and set name, let's just get rid of that. Now we need one for the ID. You see, that's very clean. And then, as I mentioned last week, in a real world application, you would be hardening your application against cybersecurity attacks, and inside your getters and setters, that's exactly where you would put a lot of your cybersecurity code. So somebody passes in a value, especially for a string like name, you would put some code in there to verify that it follows a proper pattern, doesn't have any SQL injection in it, that sort of thing. But that's exactly where you would put that. So you would just, in a case like that, and that's called validation in general. If somebody passes something in to set a property, you typically validate it to make sure that it's not going to result in an error condition or some sort of an attack. But until we do that, we got this nice clean look. Okay, that's ID. Now let's go with name. Credits. just get rid of these. That's it. And now I believe there's it's possible from my reading of the assignment that there's a requirement to provide another method here to let you set is registered without having to pass in a true or a false. And I believe it would just be called set is registered. And that's not really technically an accessor or a mutator. That's just a method to set something. And so what you would want to do in a situation like that, if somebody wants something like that so they don't have to pass in a true or a false, they can just call this method with no arguments, and it's going to set it to true in this case. That's certainly something you can give them. But the thing is, you want to write it in such a way that you're not allowing them to bypass your the validation and cybersecurity code that you've got in your accessors and mutators. So here's what I would recommend doing then. Just inside that method, go ahead and invoke your mutator. And that's going to be void. Set is registered. And I believe that would do it. Just go ahead and invoke your public-facing property, which contains the set mutator. And so when you, and this is exactly what the call to this will look like outside in the main window, XAML CS, except instead of this, it would be choice, which is choice is going to be an instance of course. And now the get name, we don't have that anymore, so it's going to be this dot name. And again, we're invoking our accessor, our public facing method name. And so when you say return this dot name, it's going to use your accessor, the get accessor inside that public facing property, and it's that way you're not bypassing your cybersecurity code. If you had some in here, you wouldn't be bypassing it. So this is a pretty secure method at this point. Class, I should say. So there we have our course class. Now let me do one more thing. If you recall, last week I introduced you to JSON objects, JSON notation, using the stream reader, and then going in and setting up your NuGet package to bring in the JSON functionality. So manage NuGet packages. Newtonsoft JSON, that's the one we want. So let's install that. And I believe in last week's announcement, I provided some links to information about NuGet and JSON. So if you didn't see that announcement, welcome to Module 6, or didn't see the video, go back and at least read the announcement and get the information in those links I provided. So now we have NuGet capability, JSON capability. And so let's go and add our JSON file. I've already dropped it into this folder. Okay, not that folder. And here it is, the course info JSON. Here it is. Now, one very important thing, also go and look at the properties, and where it says copy to output directory, it defaults to do not copy. Let's go ahead and change that to copy always. If you were to deploy this, you might want to change it to copy if newer at some point, but right now let's make it copy always. And what that means is at runtime, when it puts your compiled code into a different location at runtime, it's going to put this JSON file out there with it so you can still find it. So you're going to need that. And then I won't spend too much time on the structure of this JSON again, because we went through it last week in the video. So now let's open up main windows XAML.cs. And let's change this up a bit. So here, now notice they don't explicitly have private on here in this provided code, but it's a best practice not only to, these class level member variables are going to be private by default unless you explicitly declare it as public. If it's at this level, it's going to be private by default, but it's a best practice to go ahead and explicitly note that. Okay, so we got private course choice. And this is a constant. You may remember that from last week. I put that in, and also, if you recall, even though I don't say explicitly that this is static, when you make something a constant so that nothing at runtime can change it, nothing inside the class or outside can change it at runtime because it's constant. At runtime, that's always going to be a 9, unless you go in here at design time, open up your code and change it to something else and rebuild it. That's the only way this will ever be anything but a 9. And so when you make something a constant and it becomes static, and so you would never use this to reference this anywhere in the class. You just reference it because this is going to be the same for any instance of this class. So we got private const, max credit hours. Registered credit hours is going to start out as 0. And we're using a list as well. That's also, that's something that's above and beyond the requirements for this module. But I just want you to see all of this. As I've said many times here, you're not on the hook for doing any of this. I just want you to see it. I want you to gain some familiarity with it. And of course, you're welcome to use it. But there is no requirement. Okay, so that's that. Now, if you recall, last week we had another list of my courses, and whenever you registered for a course, we would put it into that list and then check that list to see if you had already registered. Well, now, this week, we're going to be using our isRegistered property in the course object itself, and we're going to set it there, and then we're going to check the choice object when they select it. And so we don't need that extra list. Okay, so this is all going away in my refactor. Oh, let's do this before I forget. Now, in your GUI, and it'll come up in a second. They didn't do a good job of naming the label and the text box that you're going to be writing to. It's not intuitive at all. It's just like label 2 and text box 3, that sort of thing. That's never a good practice, never a best practice. So what we're going to do, you see this is just label 3. This. text box. It's just called text box. So let's change that to TXT registered hours. So that we're more likely to remember what the name of the thing is when we need to set it. Label 1. Okay, so this is just called label 3, but this is actually what's going to hold your program state. Instead of the message box popping up that says registration confirmed, etc., it's going to go right here. So let's call this LBL registration state. So now this is not just text box, it is TXT registered hours. And again, we're going to change this up to a string.empty. Because, initially we haven't registered for anything, but in your button click event, we're going to add to that. Now, this is the code I showed you last week where we're going to read in the contents of that course info JSON file, and then we're going to deserialize it into a list of course objects. It's a beautiful thing. And using is something else that we haven't covered yet, but that just puts this stream reader within a very limited scope, so that as soon as you exit this using, it's available for garbage collection. It's not something you have to worry about removing yourself. So that's using is a very, very good and a best practice construction. So string JSON equals R being our stream reader, and the stream reader is already contains our course info JSON. Read to end. Okay, so now we're going to read that entire file into a string called JSON. You can call it anything. Now we're going to do two things at once here. We're going to deserialize this JSON string into a list of course objects, and we're going to use that to populate the drop-down list. No, I'm sorry, our list of available courses. Then we'll use that to populate the drop-down. Okay. So remember, this available courses is a list of type course. So this available courses equals JSON convert Now let's take a look at this. JSON convert deserialize object into list of type course JSON. JSON is our string that we read in from the course info file with a stream reader. Clean it up a little bit. And now we're just going to go through the available courses and add each one to our combo box. And I believe you've seen the for each loop by now. We're just going to add each course in the list of available courses to the combo box. And when you do that, it's going to invoke the, because the combo box is looking for a string representation, it's going to use the toString method automatically, which, as you recall, we overrode, we did that last week. We overrode the toString method, so that it's just going to return the name. So then you'll see in your combo box a list of the course names, even though when you select one of those, you're going to get, your selection is going to be the course object. So it's very handy. Okay, so let's see what we have now. Make sure this all builds. We're not done, but I just want to, it's always a good idea when you get to a certain point, run it, make sure that's all good, and then go forward. Otherwise you got a larger potential error service to look at. It's building. The build succeeded. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, so actually we have pretty much what we had to begin with functionally, although our infrastructure is much better. We've got a much more robust course class, and we don't have all those hard-coded entries into our combo box. We're reading this in from an external source, piping it into a list of course objects, and then spinning through that list of course objects to populate our drop-down. So functionally, it looks the same, but we're a lot better off. Now let's clean this up a little bit. Okay, now our button click, this is where the action is. So once you select, it says to do create code to validate user selection, the course object, and to display an error or a registration confirmation message accordingly. Also update the total credit hours text box if registration is confirmed for the selected course. Okay, we can do that. So first we want to check to see if we've exceeded the maximum hours. Okay, if that's true, and I notice I put greater than or equal to. If you only put greater than, then when you have 9 hours already, you've registered for 3 courses, for example, and you have 9 hours, and your Boolean gatekeeper here is only checking for greater than 9, then it's going to let you register for 1 more course. So that only when you reach 12, assuming they're all worth 3 credits, only then would it make you stop. So you want to say greater than or equal to. So because if it's equal to 9, then you want to disallow further registration. So remember, I was going to show you how to turn the brushes red and the label text red, and it is a property of the brushes on the label. Label, okay, registration status. I must have typed that wrong somewhere. LBL. Oh, registration state. Okay. I saw that come up in IntelliSense and I thought, nope, that's not what I called it. Apparently it was. Okay, registration state. Set the content. Use string.format. What did we do? So we're going to use string.format, and we're going to pipe this max credit hours into this placeholder here. And we're going to show that in red because it's not a normal condition. A normal condition would be you select a course, you click to register for it, and you register. Abnormal would be you've already registered for it and you're trying to do it again, or you can't register for any more courses because you can only register for so many hours. Else, now we're going to check that is registered property. And it's Boolean, so If you just say choice is registered, that means is it true? Otherwise, you would say not choice is registered, or choice is registered equals equal false. But here we're checking to see if it's true. Again, we're going to turn it red. So we're going to pipe choice.name into this placeholder here. I forgot my equals, forgot the assignment. Okay, so those are our two error conditions. We're going to check those first, and then else. If it's not one of those, then that means we can go ahead and register. So we can go ahead and put this in the list box. And we're using a unary mathematical operator here, plus equals. Which I believe you covered a week or so ago. Now we're going to set the contents of that text box that's supposed to show you how many hours you're registered for. We're going to set it equal to the this.registered credit hours. A string representation of that, I should say. Now we're going to, and this is where we're going to use the set is registered. Or we could say choice dot is registered and pass in a true. Let me just put that down here, comment it out. The way we've got the course object coded, these two are going to do exactly the same thing. But let's use this one, because if you recall, the way we coded this one up, it's going to use the setter in the is registered public facing property, just the same as if we had called it externally. Okay. And now we're going to set the brushes to black because this is a normal condition. And finally, we're going to set the content of the label. Foreground. Oh. Okay, what did I do here? Okay. Okay, so then we're gonna use string.format again, and we're gonna pipe in the name of the course into this placeholder here. And I believe that's it. Let's see what could possibly go wrong. Let's clean and build. And let's run it. Okay, let's see if we can register. Okay, registration confirmed. Here's our course we registered for. Here are the 3 credit hours we have now. Let's try another one. Registration confirmed for IT 315. Now we have 6 hours showing. Now let's try to re-register for 201. It turns red. You have already registered for IT 201. That's what we would expect. Now, so let's register for a 3rd class. It turns black again. Registration confirmed. IT 328. And now let's try to register for some other course. You have registered for the maximum 9 hours. That is it. That we now have everything that the earlier video that said how this was all supposed to work. We have it working exactly that way. With a change up, we're only showing red when it's an error state, not when it's a normal state. I think that's probably the thing to do. And we have a much cleaner internal implementation. And it is much more scalable. The JSON, bringing that in from JSON from an external file, that sort of mimics in any real application like this. You would be getting these courses out of a database, and so since we don't have a database to wire this up to, we can mock that up by putting it some courses in a JSON file and bringing that in and setting that up pretty much the same way we would if we were bringing it in from a database. So this is much more scalable. That way, if you were to go live with this, let's say somebody gave you the green light, and yeah, let's turn this into a real app, and then you would have a lot less work to do now than you would if you had just hard-coded everything internally. So that is it. I'm going to post this as an alternate assignment for you. Like I said, anything you see in these videos, you're free to use, but not required to use. If anything that goes above and beyond what your normal assignment says to do, that's just an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more. I just want you to see all of this stuff. The sooner you see it, the better, and it gives me a chance to talk about best practices and such. So good luck in Module 7, and I will see you next week.